I suppose, first of all, the three of you have spoken twice, and I haven't heard one of you has mentioned anything about the numbers that are dying in Ukraine. I mean, we have these less privileged people who actually didn't start the war, but are dying in it. And I don't know how your industry can be so disconnected from what happens when your equipment is used by either side. The equipment that you make is designed to kill people, and I don't know what you think about it in those terms. Back in 1960, Eisenhower, when he was leaving the US presidency, he warned America about the developing entity which he described as the military-industrial complex. I think it was the first time the term was used. And this idea that, oh, if you make the stuff, well, you don't necessarily have to use it. Well, that's not actually the way it works, right? If you make it, there's pressure to use it. The Americans spend over $800 billion a year on arms. The Americans have dropped more bombs than the rest of the world put together since 1945. You make it, there's a pressure to use it. Now, you said that it's not a very profitable industry. I beg to differ. There's not many people who agree with you on that. I'd like to compare it against all other industries around the planet. I think the arms industry does really well. And it loves war because you make money from war. If I made raincoats and umbrellas, I couldn't sell them if it didn't rain. And you'd struggle to sell equipment if there was no war. And you're selling it by the bucketful at the moment and looking to produce more and more and more because there's a war going on. It's in your financial interest that there's war. You thrive on it. Why can't you just admit that? Where are we going? This is all madness. You said that multilateralism and dialogue has been weakened. Goddamn right they have. We've refused to engage in dialogue and diplomacy on Ukraine. I'm not excusing the Russians. Putin was completely wrong to invade the place. But we could have tried to stop it, however. We've actually, in April 2022, we stopped peace breaking out. There's too many people, too many elites wanting the war to continue, and you're part of it. Your industry doesn't want the war to stop because you make less money. The Americans and NATO don't want the war to stop. This is a mad show. And there's, as my colleague said, we have a housing crisis in most countries in Europe. People are waiting too long to get a medical appointment. Healthcare is unaffordable for so many people. Social services are getting weaker, and we can't spend enough money on military, and we don't give a damn about the hundreds of thousands dying in Ukraine? How do you sleep at night?
Mike, our committee's title is Security and Defense, not a war committee. It's not a war committee. We're not making wars. I mean, we're not initiating. I mean, we're not bringing people one against another. And look at the President Zelensky. Does he want a war? I don't grab it. I mean, once he taking a floor and speaking on behalf of his people. But it's
I'm actually surprised, Nikolai, that you tell lies about me. I have never in my life said a good word about Putin. But you're buying into the mainstream media narrative that because we fight for peace, we're accused of being Putin puppets. We have no interest in Putin or in what Russia is up to. We've condemned the war. It's completely illegal. Why are you buying in? Are you trying to play it to your own media by telling lies about me? What's wrong with you? And if you're so goddamn fond of the war, why aren't you over there fighting yourself?
Wallace,
Bitte.
I think you are Irish, if my memory serves me well. But you might have been Chamberlain in 1930s, proclaiming peace, a peace that is so elusive that it led to the biggest catastrophe of the Second World War, because actions were not taken when the time was right. So how did the extreme left in this House become equal to the extreme right of other days?
When Russia drops bombs on built-up areas in Ukraine, I have no doubt that the people in Ukraine underneath the bombs are terrorized. It's a form of terrorism. When the US, NATO bombed Afghanistan for 20 years and killed several 100,000, and displaced millions. They were terrorizing the people. A UN survey showed that US NATO bombardments of civilians in Afghanistan, 45% of the people killed were children. When the US killed over 1 million civilians in Iraq, was that terrorism? When Israel terrorizes the Palestinian people every day, is that terrorism? When France and the UK and others armed the Saudi UAE to commit genocide in Yemen, where the UN said that over 400,000 are dead and 16 million are starving because of a genocide being carried out with the support of the US, the UK, France and several European states, is that terrorism? When he's going to wake up and start living in the real world?
Thanks, President. When arbitrary political decision-making has undue influence or interferes in established law, we have a rule of law problem. This is often precisely what happens when the EU makes use of its unilateral sanctions mechanism. We are applying crushing extraterritorial unilateral sanctions and secondary sanctions on governments and individuals that have blanket effect on entire populations. These decisions are taken by the Council, a political body, based on political prejudice and geopolitical agendas. These sanctions have terrible impact on countries such as Venezuela, Nicaragua, Syria and Iran, among others. Ordinary people are dying in tens of thousands for lack of access to medicines and medical treatments, all because a small collection of political actors have political grudges against the administrations in these countries. This is international banditry and political persecution with next to no basis in customary international law. What is the Commission going to do about this?
Thank you very much, President. When powerful countries refuse to show respect for international law, the less powerful suffer the consequences. According to UN figures, 545 children were killed in Ukraine in 500 days of war. Reports coming from Gaza now say that over 1,000 children have been killed in 10 days by the apartheid state of Israel. Over 1,000 children in 10 days. And our EU Commission President and the Parliament President went to Israel to give their support to the Israeli onslaught against the Palestinians. An onslaught that has taken the shape of a genocide against innocent civilians trapped in an open-air prison called Gaza. The list of Israel's war crimes grow by the minute. A complete siege, incitement to genocide, forced expulsion, collective punishment, disproportionate aerial bombardment of the civilian population, civilian structures, hospitals and humanitarian workers. By offering unqualified support for this grossly disproportionate colonial brutality, the EU leaders and politicians have made themselves complicit in Israeli war crimes. Does the EU care about the human rights of the Palestinians?
Thank you very much. Now we move to